Hi everyone. I just wanted to share a quick video to go over some of our major ideas for this week. And I've shared with you this close reading slideshow. You can find it in the modules page. And so I'm just going to go really quickly through a few of these slides. It first is going to introduce you to this idea of skimming. A lot of you probably already heard of this, but so you kind of know what this means. With academic writing, it's going to be built so that it can be skimmed. And that just means that we're getting as much information as possible really, really quickly. And so basically, if you follow these steps, you read the introduction, conclusion, the first and last sentence of each paragraph, and then you go and focus on maybe a paragraph or section, that's really going to help you get a lot of information really fast. And so this is very helpful, especially like the higher up you go in education, the more reading you're going to have to do and the more you're going to need that time back, right? So some advice, but it is really hard with narratives, we can't really skim them, right? And so I have a slide here about like, you can't really read the Wikipedia description of a movie and consider that the same as watching the movie. And the reason for that is because with narratives, the goal is to help the reader feel like they're kind of vicariously experiencing something through your storytelling. So our goal is to give them a lot of details so that they can kind of feel the same emotions we felt in that moment, or they can at least imagine kind of what our experience was like. And then that's hopefully going to lead them to the same type of conclusion that we had when we went through that experience, right? And they're going to kind of understand our message a little bit better, or maybe even agree with us. And so I have some like elements of a narrative here that could be helpful to you. Character setting, plot, theme, style, and tone. These are things that we might refer to in, videos or when I'm giving you feedback on your paper. So if any of these look unfamiliar to you, let me know. I can share some more materials. And then I have some advice for close reading, and this is going to be really helpful, especially with the first project, because I want to make sure that you are reading like writers. So instead of just reading these stories and saying like, "Ooh, I liked that," or "Ooh, I didn't like that," you want to think about what it is that you like or don't like. And even more than that, thinking about just how a story was made and put together. And that's what close reading can help you do. And it also can help you really remember stuff better. So if you're like me and you read a lot and then you completely forget what you read, these are some tips that will hopefully help with that. A big one is taking notes while you read. I used to always just highlight things in college. And then whenever the test would come up, I'd be like, oh, shoot, I don't remember why I highlighted that. And so if you could just write like a word in the margin or even just write a few notes as you're reading, that'll really help with memory. And it also helps you with retention of information in the first place, because sometimes it's like we never even learned it to begin with. We're just kind of skimming through the materials. We're not really absorbing it in our brains. But if you write stuff down, that's going to help with the cognitive processes of memory, right? So it's really good practice. Um, Try to look for patterns when you're reading. And so if you're noticing a person is using the same type of phrasing a lot, or they keep returning to an image or something like that, they're doing that on purpose. And so try to figure out, what is that pattern about? Why do they keep doing that? And you can also do this with comparing and contrasting different stories that we read. Some maybe you'll notice that certain stories are more similar than others, like in tone, or maybe the style is more experimental than another story that we read, which is more traditional. All those little things that you're noticing are helping you think more like a writer, so that when you start writing, you'll see these as kind of choices that you're making instead of just kind of thinking about, you know, maybe not feeling like you have as many tools. This will help you kind of think of like, ooh, do I want to do something more traditional, or do I want to do something more experimental? Do I want to do something funny or sad? So the more that you kind of think of things as, parts and pieces, and look for those patterns, the more it's going to help you think like that. Ask how and why. So, like, for example, if you read a joke in one of our stories and you think, wow, how is somebody able to be funny when they're writing? It is one of the hardest things to do. And so you might want to kind of pay attention to stuff like that. How did they make this image so memorable? Or like, how are they making this funny? Or how are they using words in a way that's like so, it just like makes the language sound good? Paying attention to those kinds of things, asking why somebody would use a certain image, for example, all of those kinds of questions can really, again, help you think like writers. Finally, when we're looking at narratives, some questions to be asking, and again, to think like a writer, is this one long story, or is it a series of shorter stories or anecdotes that are all leading up to one big theme? And so we're going to look at different types of stories. Some of them are going to be more of the former, some the latter, but just kind of think about, like, you don't have to write one long story for your narrative argument. You could write a series of little stories, right, that all are connected by the same theme, like we saw with Adichie's TED Talk. How does the writer begin and end the story? This is really useful because this is the stuff that we tend to struggle with. I don't know how to start. I don't know how to end. Those are the things that I hear the most frequently from students. So my advice would be see how other people are beginning and ending their stories, and then decide if that's something that you think would be good for yours. And then finally, are they coming out and saying their argument directly, or is it kind of implied? Um, Basically, if they say it directly, they're going to tell you this is the danger of a single story, right? And then sometimes they're not going to actually tell you what the argument is. They're just hoping that by reading the story, you're going to kind of figure out what it is that they're saying. And that can be risky because you have to, consider the fact that some readers aren't going to get it. But, sometimes it's worth it to just like let a reader take what they will from your story. Other things to think about are what do I like and not like? But more than that, take it one step further and think, why? Why don't I like that? And why do I like that? Those are going to help you think about what do I want to do when I'm writing my own story? And then, yeah. Okay, finally, how do I remember what I read? Make sure that when you're reading, you're trying to look for the most important information and identify what are the main points. Any kind of reflecting that you can do, like when you finish writing or reading something, if you just write one sentence down, like this story is about blah, 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 that will help you remember because you're processing it and then you're looking back and thinking, what is it that I just read? And that is going to be just one more step to kind of cement it in your brain. And then also just make sure that you're taking breaks because sometimes your brain just is not ready to continue processing information. You need to give it a little bit of space to breathe. And if you take that break, then when you read the story, it's going to be so crystal clear what it's about. All right, that's everything this week. I hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions as you're working on your stories, please let me know. And yeah, good luck with everything.